You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Thursday evening, folks. Tomorrow's Friday. I almost lost track of my days. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to and watching the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network and on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts, and also over at Odyssey, ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. That's our parent network. That's where this show normally broadcasts. And so what we're going to start doing in the meantime, we're probably going to put up some shows that we're going to record the night I'm going live here on YouTube. And the following day, we will put them up. I just saw my door open and shut, but I saw no human being. It's my kids always wanting to come in after the show starts to ask me a question. What now, Rowan?
You know where my phone is?
Do I know where your phone is? I'm on radio.
Bye.
You're going to have to go find it. There you go, folks. That's called, we don't want to bother Dad with a mundane question until he's broadcasting live. So, folks, welcome to the show. As you can see, my studio, the home studio, is exactly that. It's in my home. That's where I have the constant barrage of familial activity going on. Now, does that make it less professional a show? Maybe to some. To me, I rather enjoy it. That's what my life is all about. That's what you're going to get when you get here. So thanks for being here. I don't remember what I was saying about Odyssey Radio, other than you can go over there and hear the shows that are being rebroadcast there right now until we start going live on Odyssey again. You can see them all throughout the day. You can go check the schedule. So good to see you all. Audrey, nice to see you. Amanda B, good to see you in here tonight, as always. And Susie Q, nice to see you. And Master Finn, taking her out in Bristol fashion. Good to see you. Steve Clark, always good to see you, brother. And Steve Clark, I've got to say again, thank you again for the little surprise that you sent Rainey and me. I appreciate that, brother. That was heartfelt and heart appreciated. Thank you. And Johan, Dancing Gypsy, good to see you in here. You know, I see by your name you're a dancing gypsy. I've really got to see this on film one of these times. You've got to maybe call into the show live and do a little dance for us. Show us the dancing gypsy side of Johan. So it's good to have you here, brother. Who else did I see here? Teresa Dentone. Good to see you, Teresa. Glad you're here tonight. And it's starting to fill up. And if I'm missing you by any chance saying greetings, it's only because I missed you, not because I was ignoring you. So good to have everybody here. We've got a nice little core of people. Julianne Payne, I see you. Now behave your self. Very nice. Good to have you here, Julianne. I'm glad you're here tonight. And so I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here, maybe at 9 o'clock at night or 10 out east or 7 out west. It's not a big a draw on your time. So I do appreciate you still being here. I was talking to Mandy Moo from Andromeda 7 and other places where you've seen her with Teresa. We were chatting a bit tonight about some different things in Australia, and she may come on the show here very soon. And we're going to have her as a guest and talk about some pretty interesting things. She had me intrigued. And I've got a whole host of guests that I've been talking to lining up, so we'll get that going here as well and bring some more interest into this show. Morgan Snow, good to see you. Glad you're here. And folks, if you like this show, spread it around. I know some of you have already, and we've gained a lot of new listeners. If you like the show, spread it around. Get people to come on in, and hopefully you have friends that will enjoy the topics we talk about. And if you've got some topics you want us to talk about, let's look into that. let's look into some things. I think I'm pretty good with choosing topics, but there's always things out there that you guys would like to hear. So go ahead and this is indicative of my lifestyle right now. Here we go, folks. It's coming. There it is. All right, where the desk is here. There you go. Hey, show us all your horn. There, my ratings just went up. That is my lovely wife, Rainey.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
I told her, come on the show tonight a little bit, because when you come on, my ratings go up.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, totally.
So, I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, hi.
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 Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing.
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
Hi.
So,
Oh, geez. Hi, everybody. How you doing?
so we
tonight?
didn't plan anything for her to say or to contribute. I just thought she'd come in and contribute by just being here. So, howdy, Rainey, Steve says.
Hi, Steve.
And Johan Dancing Gypsy says, Rainey, hearts and stuff and all kinds of stuff.
Hi, Johan.
Best end of the horse.
Amanda, why the long face?
Why the long face? Nice. Thank you. Thank you, Mel. What else we got? My eyes are really fuzzy tonight.
We
I
must
can't
have some
see.
weird bug because I can't see tonight either.
Yeah, I'm just like I got to put on my cheaters. Let's see. Mike Yehudi, good to see you, brother. Glad to have you here. So, yeah, that's everybody. So what was your day like today? What'd you do today?
I started by getting up with the kids. I brought them to school.
She brought him to school today.
Yep. I went and did my 3rd iron infusion. Yeah. Woo. I came home and took a nap.
Yeah.
And then I went and got a pedicure.
What'd you get?
I got a pedicure.
You got a pedicure?
Oh, look at those toes.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Charlie Horse, let my leg go.
She's so flexible. So when did you get a pedicure?
When I went out with Kendra.
Oh, you didn't say that ahead of time.
You didn't
just said,
ask. I'm going out with Kendra. I'm going to hang out.
I'm going to go hang out with Kendra. What are you going to do, Rainey? Get a pedicure or something?
We're going to hang out with male strippers.
I really don't care. So Scotty is the other end of the horse, says Ryan Gale.
Yeah, he is.
That's right, I am.
He's my ass.
I'm the horny end.
Not.
So, nice pedicure. You didn't even
Yeah,
show me after you got
thanks.
home. You've been home for like 5 hours. You didn't show me.
Yeah.
Nice pedicure.
Yeah, thanks.
See the things I learned? I learned this while on radio. You know, Rowan wandered in here at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Right after the show started, door opens. I'm talking away. And I said, yes. And she said, do you know where my phone is?
Oh,
I'm
I thought she did that
no.
because she did this to me. How do you rate my outfit?
How do you rate my outfit? Here, show off your outfit. How do you rate her outfit?
It's a pink shirt.
It is a pink shirt.
Ellie picked it out for me.
I'm trying to get you all in there, but that's where it normally is, up there. But then you look too short. So
That's all about the angles.
it is. You have beautiful eyes.
Thanks.
I love your eyes. So how's that for scintillating radio, folks? So I told Rainey, come on in. I said, say hi to everybody. Because you weren't here. You were only here like 3 minutes last Sunday.
Yeah.
Because you had stuff going on.
I didn't feel good last Sunday.
No, she didn't. She was crabby and all of that stuff. So I had a good talk with Rowan's counselor today.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
It was her 90-day review.
90-day review. My little girl wanted to talk to the counselor at school, and so they lined it up.
It's
So
not a
that-
school counselor.
I know it's not the school one; it's a
She
real
just
one
does it
from
at
the school. And so she said she's talking to Ro about anger issues and anxiety and things like that. And she was talking to me about, well, it's been a rough year because of, COVID and all of that stuff. And I said, I said, we're on that political spectrum that doesn't see that the same way. I said, I think the roughest part for our kids is having to go to school and wear a mask 6 hours
all
a day.
day. Oh, man, they get mad at those masks.
They sure do. So I had that conversation with the counselor today. And
our kids, just so you know, have been in school all school year. There has
Yes.
not been anything changed except they get like 2 extra days off a month.
Yep. And then Rowan, somebody in her class, like a week to 10 days ago, got positive for COVID.
They did the test and then sent the kid to school and waited for the result.
Yeah. They did the test, sent the kid to school. And then when they got the results, called the school and said, oh, my kid I sent to school yesterday and today, we got the results back and they're positive.
It was the same day.
Oh, same day.
So the nurse came down, got the kid, and then within 5 minutes, they had the rest of the class.
Rest of the class sequestered, go home. And so Rowan's been home for about 10 days. She goes back to school on Tuesday.
She could go back on the 15th, but that's Saturday. And
That's
then they don't
Saturday.
have school on Monday, so Tuesday. She has
Yes.
to go back next Tuesday.
So, yes.
F-tards.
Exactly. Hey, Delaney.
Let's show that.
Good to see you. F-tards, says Delaney.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you know how irritating it is to have a 9-year-old who just wants to be with her friends home all
All
day.
day long. Now, there's her little friends across the way over there, the twins, they're homeschooled, right?
No, but they go to a different school, and on Wednesday mornings, they have the first 2 hours off. They
Okay.
do a late start on Wednesdays. So she's been running over there to play every Wednesday.
Yeah, so she was out playing with them yesterday. So there you go. I don't know, all of you who have kids, if you're having to deal with that or not. Hey, Gaza Kev. I talked to Gaza. It was at this morning. That's how long my days are. It was like 5 this morning here, something like that. But I was talking to him about his garden. And he has, what did you call those vegetables? They're like Australian sweet potatoes that he grows, and he dug them up. They're roots like potatoes. I can't remember which are Kumaras. Is it Kumara? Kumara? So with the delay, it takes a few seconds for anybody to answer in there. But so Kumaras, I think we've got to try those. We've got to find some of those and give them a shot. He said they're great. He grows them in his, Kumara. It's a Maori word from New Zealand. And so, Gaza, are you in, no offense, I don't know if it's as delicate as like North and South in America, but are you from New Zealand or Australia? I'm not quite sure where you are out there. And I should know that, and I don't. I just forget things. I forget things.
He forgets everything. You forget everything.
And what did I forget last?
I don't
She
know.
doesn't remember.
I don't remember.
So, well, we're going to talk about Cain and Cain murdering his brother Abel and the possibility of other civilizations being there instead of the biblical story ringing exactly true. And so Cain and the other people, we talked about that last night and talked about it tonight. And we're going to talk about it tonight, kind of wrap it up tonight, but it leads into so many other things. These are, remember when I told you all I had initial questions that started making me drift off of the theology I was taught in and getting out of the church I was in and so on. Well, this is one of those other questions. So you look absolutely stunning. I'm looking at you on the monitor. Wow. You're just amazing.
Cool.
Just thought I'd let you know.
Thanks.
You take my breath away. I'm like awestruck.
That's great.
So I'm glad you came in.
Cool. Thanks.
Oh, now somebody else is.
Yeah, it really is. It's
So,
9:14. I should take them.
It's
to bed.
time for bed for the kids. It's 9:14.
It's been hard to wake them up the last couple of days. I've been letting them go to bed at 9.
Hi.
I finished packing my book.
Did you?
Hey,
Good
come here.
job.
You might as well come here and say hi. Come up here. Here's Ellery, our 6-year-old girl.
Whoa, whoa.
Oh, 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 staggering like a drunk sailor. Get up there. Oh, don't knock those papers
Don't
down.
pull up mommy's shirt.
Down. That's daddy's job.
No, your hand was in my shirt as you were lifting her up. My shirt was going
nice.
up. Stop.
What'd you do? Show me that again.
No.
So My kids cater to my needs.
Haha, I got another
Haha,
shirt
she's
on
got another
underneath.
shirt on
And
underneath.
it's pink.
So there you go, folks.
I have
Careful of the. Oh, Mom moved the papers. Okay.
Okay, stop. pulling up
Okay,
my
stop
shirt.
that now. You don't want to show Mom's boobs to the world. Seriously.
They can go on
So-
Facebook if they want to see them.
Yeah, that's right. Go on Facebook.
Lulu.
You put your shirt down.
Put your shirt down. Good night. You go to bed. Mom's going to take you to bed.
You ready to go to bed? Okay, stand up.
All right. There you go, folks. Scintillating my familial radio.
Oh,
Good night,
Should
beautiful.
I get on your back?
no.
Yeah. Mm,
Mwah.
Good night.
Give Dad kisses.
Give me a kiss.
No.
Hell yeah,
Well, I'll
girls.
take
Don't
one
kiss
then.
them.
Don't give me one. I'll take it. Okay. All right, you guys.
Tell everybody Bubbles.
Poo-poos.
Poo-poos. There you go. That's my kids. All right, guys.
Say bananas.
Poo-poos.
There you go.
Bananas.
Poo-poos.
Say candy.
Poo-poos.
Chocolate.
Bye. Good night.
Say Bubbles if you want me to take you to Dairy Queen.
Bubbles.
She had to let that one sink in for a second. Okay, good night.
Good night.
Bye. Nice spanking butt.
Let's see if
Thanks
we
for
can
that
see
spanking butt.
yours here.
All right, guys. It's just you and us again.
Have
You
fun.
guys and me. I will have fun, and I'll be done in a while.
All right.
I have no idea how long it will take.
Okay, the TV's off when you come upstairs, so don't turn the TV on.
Okay.
Woke me up last night.
Oh, sorry. I just put on sleep music.
Yeah, with the bright screen.
Put on sleep music with the bright music.
And when I'm migraining, that bright screen hurts my eyes.
Oh,
even when
I'll
I'm
bet.
sleeping.
I'll bet.
Come on, Stinky.
Good night, guys. Bye.
We're waiting for you.
All right, folks, we're back. And thank you for, as I was saying earlier, this is my show. This is what happens. I hope there's enough meaty content day in and day out on this show that when my wife comes in, well, she comes in every Sunday. If you don't know that, Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, Rainey joins me here. And if she's not doing massage, many times on the weekends, she's stuck doing massage at the hotels, which is good for her, but cuts into our radio time together. And so hopefully the content is good enough that on all other counts, that when my family comes in and invades with the little kids and so on, it's okay with you, because you know what? It's okay with me. Remember the stories about John F. Kennedy when he was president 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago? They said that the one person or the people who could come into his office unannounced at any time, his son, little John, of course, the late John, when he was like 2 or 3 years old, he used to come into the Oval Office, and he'd play around the desk and under the desk while the president is in these heavy duty meetings. And somebody said to JFK once, "Do you think it's okay that your son's in here during this? This is pretty heavy duty world business." And JFK just told him, he says, "My son can come in here anytime he wants." And that's kind of the way it is here. So slave place with Pa. That's right, Amanda. So Patch, good to see you. Durwood, nice to have you here tonight. So I'm glad that it's awesome for you guys to see the family. You should have her climb on your shoulders. I would love to have seen that. She does it all the time, Johan. She will climb up on my shoulders and up, and she'll be way up and out. So, yeah, Patch is moving to Florida, folks. Taking a job, moving down to Florida. Congrats, Patch. I know it's been a long haul for you, so I'm glad that this is going on for you and that that's going to work for you. So outstanding, and congratulations. So, sorry, I'm just adjusting my chair here. I've got this hard stool. These are what I sit on. See, I've got this, and one of these days I got to get a nice stool, but this is what I sit on while I'm doing radio. And sometimes it's really hard on my buttocks. And so you see me shifting a lot, and that's why. So there we go. And my desk is at a big height, a great height. These are, I don't know, 3 foot tall stools, 3.5, something like that. So there you go. Mundane. Let's get that out of the way. We're done with that. So welcome, everybody. Everybody who's come in, welcome. I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad you take the time. Elderberry, good to see you. And everybody else, Barbie D, good to see you. And I'm glad everybody's here. Let's kind of dig into this. Remember last night, we kind of left off. We had to leave off at a place. We were talking about Cain and the other people. Cain, the biblical Cain, the son of Adam and Eve, who I believe was a twin brother to Abel, only because the multiple births from the first family in the biblical mythology fits the mythology of all other cultures that seem to have, when they have a first family in creation, they seem to always have multiple births. That would be the multiple birth from the original parents or multiple birth from one of the children. There's always twins, triplets, quadruplets, quintuplets, sextuplets, etc. And so I believe it fits the mold that Cain and Abel were twin brothers. And so we were looking at all the stuff around that. And we kind of left off talking about this whole thing, mythology plus history divided by spirituality equals the wonder. If you remember, Carl Sagan once said, and I've mentioned this quote before on this show, he said his parents instilled in him two amazing things that he carried with him throughout his life. One was the understanding that there is a need for the scientific method. And number two, that he should never lose his sense of wonder. And so while he said, Sagan was a big proponent of course, the possibility of alien life having visited here. He wasn't a Von Daniken or guys like that, but he was an astronomer and an exobiologist, and he was an established atheist and a reasoned skeptic, and he theorized that Earth may have been visited by various galactic civilizations many times during Earth's primordial past. He also insisted it was not entirely out of the realm of possibility that extraterrestrial artifacts and the remnants of visitations and even civilizations may still exist, or even that some of the some alien base might still exist within our solar system to provide continuity for successive expeditions. And so while evidence is only circumstantial, it's beginning to look as if our link to primates might be a little shakier than we thought it was. Our link to primates is as strong as our link to platypuses. DNA is shared in common with almost every life on this planet. And it brought us up to the point where we started talking about the serpent in the garden. Now, this has to do with the Cain and Abel story and what happened with Cain, and why Adam and Eve were ousted from the garden, why Cain went out of the garden, how many kids were there, and so on. And I bring this up in this context, some things that you've heard me talk about before, but I'm going to blend them into this context of Cain and the other people that were out there when Cain, and if you weren't here last night and you didn't hear it, the other people has to do with when Cain leaves the Garden of Eden or the Eden region. Cain ends up in the land of Nod, which means basically wandering. And Nod, we found east of Eden, is Iraq, where he builds a city, Uruk or Enoch, named after his first son. He marries a wife, he has sex with her, they have a son, he names him Enoch, and then he builds a city and names the city after his son, Enoch. And through the linguistics, the name Enoch is the same as pronounced as Uruk. And Uruk is the city it's the base word for Iraq. It is also the word that means in ancient Paleo language, it means original city or first city. And so, hey, Michelle, Canna McFree, good to see you. I heard sex, said Gaza. Yeah, there was sex, all right. I actually think the whole story in the Garden of Eden is one that is a story of sexual discovery, sexual, how would you say, the beginning of breeding of species. And Adam and Eve and the whole forbidden fruit thing, I think Eve takes the fruit from the serpent. She gives it to Adam as well. What happens next? They're all naked. And this is attributed to the sinful fall of mankind. But I think there's more to it than that. So as mentioned, the book of Genesis recounts a tale of the temptation of Adam's wife, Eve, in the Garden of Eden. And she, being the mother of all humanity, was the cause, according to certain theologies, of the fall of mankind, bringing in a sinful nature, thus breeding into us all a sinful nature that puts us in need of the Redeemer. In the Jewish sense, it was the kinsman Redeemer, or the Messiah, the Christ. And it's illustrated in the modes and methods of Jewish sacrificial temple worship, and in the sacrifice of the Christ in the New Testament for the propitiation and the atonement of mankind's sins. But Eve's downfall came as a result of her encounter with the serpent character in the Garden of Eden. And we've talked about this many, many, many times in different contexts, how the serpent is known by the Hebrew word in the book of Genesis, in the Garden of Eden story, as Nakash, which means the illuminator, the bringer of knowledge, the trickster, the one who turns the world upside down, the bright shining one, and which of course coincides with Psalm 82, talking about the bright shining ones were the Elohim. And so the implication encoded in Genesis, in the passage in Genesis, may even imply that she, Eve, had intercourse with the serpent character, with Nakash, one of the Elohim, thus rendering her bite out of a piece of fruit pretty small bananas to what was actually happened. As there was a quote, I want to say this was, no, I can't think of his name. There was a quote that said, because they screwed, we're fucked, in other words. And so have you ever encountered a serpent that walked upright, spoke in an audible, understandable voice? According to Genesis, the snake that Eve encountered did both of those things. Well, now, while it's probably safe to say that Eve was not very experienced in the ways of the world, seeing as she was the very first woman, according to the scripture, it's also probably very safe to say that she knew the difference between a snake and a man. And according to the scripture, this snake was neither snake nor man. It says in Genesis 3:1, now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Now, the reason I'm going to the scripture and examining the scriptural story here is it's important for us to see this story is an encoded message. Amen. Duh, says Amanda. Duh. Hey, Patch, it's so good to see you. He said he's missed a lot of people here. We actually talked a little bit on the phone today, Patch and I. So going on, the Hebrew word that's used in the book of Genesis. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The Hebrew word for the book of Genesis, for the word snake, which you and I have all talked about before, is nakash, pronounced na-kosh. And it means magician or enchanter, a spellbinder, to illuminate, to shine. And the Jewish rabbinic interpretation never saw this word as meaning a literal snake. It was to be understood as a shining being with the power to enchant. Not in the way of a sorcerer enchantment, but the enchanting, the charm, the bringer of enchantment. And so this is a far cry from a snake in the grass. And in many of the interpretations is none other than Lucifer. But mind you, the Luciferian connection to the serpent in the garden didn't happen for about 1,000 years after the Genesis account was written. If Moses indeed wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, as I've said before on this show in other contexts, He would have done so around 1400 BCE. You don't see a mention of Lucifer being compared to the serpent in the garden, or a devil, or a Satan, until almost the 400s BCE, when the texts are rewritten by the 72 rabbis who went to the Library of Alexandria after the Babylonian captivity, and they got permission of Ptolemy II, the pharaoh of Egypt, to go to the Library of Alexandria to construct the historical works and the religious works of the Jewish people. So that's when Lucifer comes in. And because the text in Genesis never actually calls out a Nakash Luciferian connection. But it does make a connection in Genesis 82, as I've already mentioned, to God standing with the Elohim. And Elohim, the singular version of God, stood in the midst of the Elohim, the plural version, the same word, only in meaning plurality. And he said to them, "You're all gods, you're all the bright shining ones, the bright shining princes of heaven." And who is the bright shining one in the Garden of Eden? Why, it's the serpent character. I believe this is one of the Elohim, one of the divine council, as he is known, or as they are known. Really, literally, the Bible in the Old Testament does not teach monotheism. It teaches that there is a God who is in charge of other gods. Elohim. Elohim, the God of many gods, or among many gods. Then you had the sons of the Elohim, the Bene Ha Elohim, the sons of God in Genesis 6, and so on. We've been through that a million times on this show. And so this is the being, Nakash, that influences Eve, or beguiles her, in a more accurate sense, into eating the fruit of the forbidden tree in the midst of the garden. It says in Genesis 3, 2-3, "The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say, you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you're going to die.'" Now, here's where it gets interesting in the linguistics. The Hebrew word for that tree is the word pronounced etz, E-T-S, if you spell it phonetically, etz. It's a word that's in a very close association with the Hebrew word toledah, both meaning generations. So the Hebrew word for the tree in the garden is etz, which really means generations. And it's from these words that we draw the modern equivalent of family tree. So other variations of the word etz is the wood of the tree as an opening and closing of a door. And so in a broad application, the same word can apply to the term portal, opening of one's mind, enlightenment. Now, what does that do to you when it says that God said, "You shall not eat of the tree, etz, in the center of the garden"? And it doesn't spell out which tree that is till a little later. But what does that do to your interpretation, your understanding of that passage? Don't eat of this, or don't partake of, or don't touch this portal, this opening and closing door, the opening of one's mind, the enlightenment. Do not go near it. Do not touch it. Now, it's highly suggested that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, from which Eve is said to have eaten the forbidden fruit, was not a literal tree at all, but rather symbolic of the pre-Adamic races that lived in the region surrounding the Garden of Eden. These races are said to encompass, guess what? The Atlantean civilization. There's room for, even though that's such a storybook thing, a fairy tale to us, a mythology to us, the Atlantean cultures. Is this some of the cultures that maybe even Carl Sagan was intimating when he said that there may have been alien visitation that visited civilizations in the past, or started civilizations in the past? So it's very interesting stuff. The phrase, now as we go on in there, talk about the tree, then it talks about the fruit of the tree. It's the Hebrew word, it's pronounced P-E-R-I-Y, peri, perai maybe. And fruit It's the produce of the ground. It's offspring. It's children. It's progeny of the womb, or figuratively fruit of actions. And the phrase eat of it is the Hebrew word akal, akal. And this word has many uses, among which one use means to lay with a woman, sexual intercourse. And then the word touch, don't even touch it. So stay away from the tree, the portal of knowledge. Stay away from the fruit of the tree, the product of the womb, the fruit of action. Don't eat of it. It means to lay with a woman, a call. And the word touch, don't even touch it, it says. It's the Hebrew word nagah, to touch, to lay the hand upon for any purpose. It's a euphemism for to touch and to have sex with a woman or with a man. So all of these words, which are fairly neutral in their usage, all have different usages in the Hebrew language, which all strike to the core of sexual activity. And then the serpent said in Genesis 3:5-7, it said, "You will not certainly die," the serpent said to the woman, "for God knows," or Elohim knows, "that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil." And when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were open. They realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Now, that's a lot of junk happening in just a sentence or two there. Ryan Gale said, God gives man free will and then punishes him for using it, pretty much. I'm giving you free will, but don't do this. You have free will to violate it, but there's going to be nasty consequences if you do. So now this whole thing about the tree, the eating of the fruit, it said she saw that it looked good, it looked delicious, and it looked like something that would give her wisdom, as the serpent told her. So she ate of it. Then she gives it to Adam. So now if these are all sexual terms in the Hebrew that are used to describe what the tree was at the taking and the touching and the giving and the so on, is this actually an encoded message of sexual activity? Did Nakash, one of the Elohim, have sex with Eve? And then she passes that on also to Adam. They all have sex together. It's a Adenic menage a trois, as I've said in the past. So, and what happens? She bears twins. This was obviously no ordinary tree. In fact, it wasn't a literal tree at all. Many biblical scholars interpret this as Lucifer, as one of the Elohim. Maybe Lucifer was one of the Elohim. The phrase pleasant to the eyes is the Hebrew word chamad or shamad, to desire, to covet, to take pleasure in, to delight in, to be desirable, to delight greatly, to desire greatly, desirableness, preciousness. So it was pleasant to her eyes. It was all those things. The word desired is the Hebrew word ta'ava, to yearn for, to lust after, used of bodily appetites, a longing, and by implication, a delight, subjectively, satisfaction, objectively, a charm, a desire, a wish, longing is of one's heart, lust, an appetite, covetousness in a bad sense. To covet, to wait longingly, is what the desired meant. Then it was she took the fruit, the Hebrew word lachach, and it's a primitive root. It sounds Klingon, doesn't it? It's a primitive root to take in the widest variety of applications, to take, to lay hold of, to receive, to marry, to take a wife, to take to or for a person, to procure, to get, to take possession of, to select, to choose, to take in marriage, to receive, to accept. So Eve did all these things. It was pleasant to her eye. She desired it and she took it. And so a very different picture of Eve's temptation in the Garden of Eden is beginning to really emerge when you start to dig into the linguistics of the text. The parsed passage above is far more than a sinful, disobedient appreciation of fruit. All of the references we hear of Eve eating an apple or a piece of fruit, or depictions in religious art of Eden couple eating a big piece of fruit, is merely coded information and a hiding of what the passage is truly talking about. So what really happened in this scene in the Garden of Eden? Eve, the mother of humanity, lost her virginity to the serpent. As you can see that she encountered him sexually before ever having sex with her husband, Adam. And further down the passage, the text is implicit that Eve was impregnated by this encounter. And then she drew her husband into the scenario, and he willingly partook of the fruit. Here, eat this fruit. I'm eating it. Have some. It's good. Three-way, and Eve also becomes impregnated by Adam. So Eve was now bearing fraternal twins, Cain and Abel, one from the seed of Adam, the other from the seed of the character known as the serpent in the garden, Nakash. And the grand sin that was committed in Eden, get this, here's an important point. The grand sin that was committed in Eden was not mere disobedience in the eating of a forbidden piece of fruit from a forbidden tree in the midst of a garden. That's a word picture. That's an allegory. It was a sexual sin that created a dual sin according to God. It created a dual bloodline in the twins conceived in Eve's womb. And according to the subsequent passages in Genesis, we learn that Abel was the blood seed of Adam, but that Cain was the blood seed of the serpent, and that the lineage would be in constant conflict one with the other, starting with Cain murdering his twin brother. So there you go. Hey, Michelle, we love you too. So glad you're here. Now, I'm going to take this now back to Cain and the other people, but we're going to take a little bit of a break. Just a minute and a half. Same old thing. It's me promoting my stuff. And so I want you to be here, take a look at this. I hope you enjoy this. Here we go. See you back in about a minute and a half.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with two T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
And of course, we are back from that little break. Thanks for letting me do my shameless self-plug. And welcome back. We're talking about Cain. We're talking about the whole Garden of Eden story. Now, we've talked about this before, but I think it's very interesting in the context of Cain. And now, in the context, and by the way, I put a link in. If any of you wants to call into the show, I can see that on here, and I'll be able to call you into the show. If you've got something you want to add to the topic here tonight, Go ahead. If you got some ideas, call in. Just want to say, hey, call in. So let's take this to where I'm going with this in this article that I wrote a few years back. Alien interruption. The earliest human civilization of which contemporary science has any archaeological record is the Sumerian culture of ancient Mesopotamia. Now, that, of course, has been augmented by places like Göbekli Tepe, places like that. But civilization, that contemporary science links to, now it's going further back to Göbekli Tepe and other places, but it was Mesopotamian, the Sumerian culture. A quantum leap in humankind's intellectual development occurred in Sumer, Akkad, 6,000 years ago, when the very first cuneiform writing was developed to record a dramatic astronomical event. You know what that event was? The starburst of Vela X, or Vela 10, a star that went supernova about 1,300 light years away from our solar system. Now, it can still be seen today as a faintly flashing pulsar, but it took 1,300 light years for that light to get here. So it happened a very long time ago. So virtually overnight, in evolutionary terms, the Sumerians gave the world written language, and the first fundamental character of which was the Sumerian symbol for star. Now, it was George Michanowski, a specialist in Mesopotamian astronomy, then demonstrated how that first word ever written by a human hand was soon linked to a symbol for deity, communicating the term star god. And in the blink of an eye, the Sumerians gave humanity the first love song, the first school system, the first directory of pharmaceutical concoctions, the first law code, the first parliament. And the roots of the Judeo-Christian religious belief grew from the tree of knowledge, the Garden of Eden, which tradition places in that same geographical area as Sumer. And you remember the map from last night? If you weren't here last night, I'm sorry you didn't get to see it, but we had that map up. Maybe I could show you again tonight. You can get the idea of that map. Here, I got it right here. And I'll open this up so you can see this. I'm going to have to share my screen with you. But let's do this because I think it's a fun exercise. It's fun to look at this. I'm going to share my screen. So you're going to see my screen here first of all. Boom and boom. Share. And we're going to go over here. Now, if you look at this map that I've called up here, take a close look at this. I can zoom in just a little bit here. Now, here I could zoom way in, actually, but this is the map I showed you last night. And this is what is now Iraq and Iran. You can see the Caspian Sea up on the right, the Black Sea. Let's make it fit on the screen here. Black Sea is up here, Caspian Sea, Gulf of Aqaba down here, the Mediterranean Sea off to center left, Israel on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, Mount Hermon or Mount Armon. You can see the Red Sea down here. But right here you have Sumer, right down here, kind of lower center right. There's Sumer. Akkad is just a little bit to the northwest. And what you've got in Turkey is all up in here, of course. But what you've got here is the region of Eden, which they believe was in Iraq, only because in the biblical description of the Garden of Eden, it mentions the rivers that bordered Eden. The Gihon River on the north, up here, the Pishon River on the east, the Tigris River on the south and running southeast. And, of course, you have Ur is down here, Ur of the Chaldees. You have Uruk, the city of Cain that we talked about, is right down here. You have the Euphrates River running here. You have Babylon is right here. And then, of course, Sumer and Akkad. And the region of Eden is all right here in this river valley. surrounded by all these rivers. And of course, the land of Nod, where Cain wandered to, from Eden east to Nod, which is in Iran. But he builds the city down here in Iraq, what is today Iraq, Uruk, which is right down here. So there you go. That's the map I showed you last night, and so that gives you an idea, kind of takes you back into that. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Let's get back into this. And if you start looking at this, it was during this very same time period, the origins of Western culture were nursed in Sumer. And it's come to be acknowledged as the cradle of civilization, all due to a supernova, which caused someone to sit down and create a written language word for star. And it was during this very same period that Berosus, the Babylonian high priest, wrote of the coming of the half-fish, half-human Oannes, the beast with reason, who appeared in their midst and taught the Sumerians letters, sciences, and every kind of art. He taught them how to construct houses, to create laws, the arts of agriculture. He taught them everything that would soften their manners and civilize them. So Cain, the twin brother of Abel, was fathered by the reptilian serpent, if you will, in the Garden of Eden, Nakash, one of the Elohim, the caste of gods. And this event went down in religious mythology as the fall of mankind at the hands of Eve's temptation and eating of the forbidden fruit. Cain murdered his twin brother in accordance with the enmity which God said was set between the twin siblings. And after being banished by God from the region of Eden, Cain wandered into Nod in the region just east of Eden, and there he built his city, which became known throughout history as Uruk, the first city. Cain didn't have an encounter with the other people. Cain was the other people. And it's clear that he bequeathed to the inhabitants of Sumer a connectivity to the reptilians from the sea and the dragons from the sky. Humankind was indeed genetically altered by alien intelligences. And we have the Sumerian, Akkadian, cuneiform texts left as a remnant of those events that altered the course of human evolution. And so were there other people? Cain encountered the other people. Cain was also one of the other people. He was one of the peoples that was wiped out in the flood, according to the religious mythology. The Kenites, those who spread throughout. Audrey said, aliens, I'm right here. So there you go. Is that something that we should even consider as being something that needs to be considered? So let's move on. We've only got a few minutes technically left of the show. And what we're going to end up doing, by the way, if we start recording for the radio, we may have to just call out the time, say goodnight to the radio audience at 10 o'clock, and then move into continuing the show in the live stream. So we'll get that all set up as the days move on here. Now, there's a big question about who did Cain marry? Who did he marry when he left Eden? Who was this woman he found? And who did he marry? Who was his wife? The Bible reports only that after killing Abel, that Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, it says, and she conceived and bore Enoch. That's Genesis 4:16 through 17. So since the Enlightenment, this question has repeatedly come up in rhetoric against biblical inerrancy. It's a good question. And after all, Cain and Abel are apparently the only children of creation's first couple. So where did this unnamed woman Cain marries in the land of Nod come from? And for that matter, what did Cain If Adam, Eve, and Cain are the only people yet living on the earth, why is Cain afraid that in his wanderings, anyone who meets me may kill me? He says in Genesis 4:14. Who's out there at the moment to threaten Cain? Taking the biblical text at face value, the first couple had no children prior to their expulsion from Eden. Even if John Milton's Paradise Lost, which was influenced by Christian theologian Augustine, extols the perfection of Adam and Eve's sexual relations in Eden before the fall. So the question predates the Enlightenment by centuries. The early rabbis had to wrestle with this question, as did Christians who needed credible responses to questions like this one from pagans who thought that the Bible was laughably crude. And there are venerable Jewish and Christian answers. And in both cases, based on the principle that all humans on earth necessarily descended solely from Adam and Eve, the first humans God created, according to the biblical text, Cain's wife would have had to have been his sister, right? So thus in Genesis Rabbah, it's a midrash. It's a collection of 5th century current era writings. And by the way, the midrash means in Hebrew, it means midrash, means seeking out, refers to the rabbinic interpretations of the Old Testament texts, often taking the form of stories that fill in the missing pieces of the biblical narrative. So in the midrash, Cain was a twin, it says. With him was born a girl, and Abel was one of 3, for with him came 2 girls. The Genesis Rabbah says that Cain married one of Abel's twin sisters. In fact, Cain killed Abel in a fight over his sister. So now none of this is in the biblical text. This is midrash. This is rabbinic interpretation. So early Christians similarly explain that Cain married his sister, pointing simply to Genesis 5:3-4 that says, when Adam had lived 150 years, he became the father of a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth. And he had other sons and daughters. Now, after the years of wandering, Cain married one of Adam's many other daughters. So the theory goes. But almost like with the second amendment of the Constitution, where it talks about where the comma is and what the antecedent is when it's talking about guns and gun ownership and possession and things like that. Same thing in this text. Same kind of thing. When Adam lived 150 years, he became the father of a son named Seth, and he had other sons and daughters. Does that mean he had other sons and daughters before Seth or after Seth? When he was 150, he had Seth and other sons and daughters. So when you ask about Cain's wife, you have to offer a different explanation. I got to warn you, and I have to take this warning, that modern scholarship is not as diverting as the traditional Jewish and Christian ones. I got to tell you about how in recent years, sociologists and anthropologists have called attention to the fact that traditionally, as humans, we've tended to give ourselves group identities in opposition to the others. We are who we are because we don't do what they do. So a biblical example of this is the Israelite use of uncircumcised to identify the Philistines. They were the uncircumcised lot. And the implication is that a proper human being, an Israelite, would be circumcised, and that it is humanly abnormal, repulsive to be otherwise, divided into groups based on foreskins. So in essence, we are fully and normally human, and anyone who is not us is at best less human, at worst not human at all. And Egyptologist Gerald Moores had observed that in ancient Egypt, the word for Egyptian was also the word for human. So foreigners, outsiders, were inhuman or subhuman, represented injustice and chaos. Non-Egyptians were barbaric, with monstrous bodies, animal-like, said the ancient Egyptians. And a proper pharaoh kept them firmly under his foot. Teresa says, are you kidding? After menage a trois with a snake, boulders, cactus, etc., they end up experiencing a snit supernova. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I gave up sex, because of the supernovas. Now I understand it. My DNA memory is returned. There you go, Teresa. Boom, you've solved the problem. So, or as Patch says, fuck that. So, a similar mindset kind of explains where Cain's wife came from. Now, there were no doubt other people out there when God created Adam and Eve, but they didn't count as far as the Israelite storyteller was concerned. They weren't fully human in the sense that Adam and Eve were. It was, in fact, appropriate that Cain married one of those other foreign people because his sin had literally diminished his full humanity, and he was fathered by one of the Elohim. He was only partially human, and it separated him not only from God, but also from his properly human mother and father. So geography is very relevant here when talking about Cain's wife. In the pre-modern world, to paraphrase former Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill, if you're as old as I am, if you remember Tip O'Neill, he and Reagan, constantly locking heads, but good friends. All religion was local, Tip O'Neill said. So people seldom traveled far from home. And people who lived outside their own geographical purview did not figure in their thinking. So this was the operational factor in ancient Israel's thinking about God and the world. In the oldest strata of biblical text, Israel was assigned to Yahweh and other nations to other gods. Now, this is from Deuteronomy 32, 8 through 9, one of the books of Moses. When the Most High apportioned the nations, when he divided humankind, he fixed the boundaries of peoples according to the number of gods. The Lord's own portion was his people. Jacob was allotted his share. So you can find all kinds of differing sources on this. There's all kinds of stuff about the Dead Sea Scrolls, according to the sons of Israel, according to the sons of God, and so on. But this is what you get in Deuteronomy. God is the God of Adam and Eve, and of Cain and Abel, and of Seth, and all who followed in the line of Seth. So this changed with the exile to Babylon in 586 BCE. When Babylon came and sacked Israel and carried off all the people as slaves to Babylon, the exiles' experience of living far from their Judean homeland expanded their awareness of the whole wider world and their perception of God's domain. And so the anonymous prophet in Babylon, known as Second Isaiah, portrays Yahweh, God, not as the national deity of a single ancient Near Eastern people, but as Lord of the universe. In Isaiah 45, 5 through 6, Yahweh informs King Cyrus of Persia, I arm you, though you do not know me, so that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is no one besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. This was a written contravention after the Babylonian captivity. So even more to the point, the priestly authors of the creation story in Genesis 1, 2 through 4, and I'm talking about when I say the priestly authors, I believe it was originally written by Moses. It was rewritten, it was reconstructed because all those texts had vanished in the captivity. They rewrote it after the captivity. That's where we've talked about this before. This is where our Septuagint comes from. The Greek version of the Old Testament. Greek, Hellenized Greek, was the language of commerce of the day. And they wrote at the Library of Alexandria, these 72 rabbis reconstructed the Hebrew Old Testament from memory, from oral tradition, some from the scrolls. Think of Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, going to the tower and seeking out all the old scrolls. This is what they had to do. And what they did in that story was they changed God to a more universal God because their experience broadened beyond Judea. And so the priestly authors of the creation story were likely writing in Babylon, and their systematic account of creation in 6 days arises out of their widened perception of God's power. And so the placement of this more modern creation of the universe story before that of Adam and Eve's story, attributed to the earlier Yahwist source, usually abbreviated as J for Jehovah. It reset the context of the older story so that questions like, who was Cain's wife, now seemed fairly logical. So this is interesting stuff when you start digging into it a little bit more. Let's see. Florida school buses didn't use air conditioning, but those commuter buses do. They pay well. Conversation going on over there. I thought it might have been something pertaining to this. I'm drunk on life, but not on alcohol. Thank goodness, says Teresa Dantone. Well, good for you, Teresa. So, there's a bunch more. It's 10:06 already, Central Standard Time. I have a lot more information here. I want to cover one more thing. This should take just a few minutes, and then we'll call it quits for tonight. There's a big question then that looms on all of this. Cain being ousted from Eden, did he actually get away with murder? So, was Cain ever punished for killing Abel? Or did God just let him get away with murder, exiling him? Most readers of the Bible would identify Cain's punishment as being cursed and exiled from the grounds. But while this sentence seems to have satisfied God, not everyone was content. Readers often notice that a significant detail was missing in the Genesis 4 narrative. At no point do we read how or when Cain died. We're told about Abel. We're told about the deaths of Adam and Seth. Those are both recorded in Genesis, but not Cain's. While there are many people in the Bible whose deaths are not mentioned, the silence over Cain's death might suggest that he lived a very long life and died naturally. Not only does Cain escape capital punishment for murdering his brother, but he's even able to marry, to raise children, to build a city. And unlike Abel, Cain's story has a happier ending, which seems wholly unjust. And remember, one of the things that you can take note of is that God comes to Cain in the biblical text and warns him, I know what you're thinking about killing your brother. Sin lies at the door. Don't give it opportunity. Be careful. Do we see in the account anywhere where God's saying to Abel, Abel, your brother's thinking about whacking you. You better think, you better be careful. You better take guard. We don't see God warning Abel, but we see God going to Cain and saying, don't do this. Then what happens afterward? God comes back to Cain. Where's your brother? And has all this stuff. And so here, Abel gets whacked and God doesn't even warn him. But he talks an awful lot to Cain. I think there might be something to that. I think it might be because Cain is part Elohim blood. At this point, he is a half-breed, if you will, celestial being and human. So, and this is why he is separated out. So modern readers of the Bible might note the absence of Cain's death and even wonder about the justice of God here. But they're not likely to change the story to fit their sense of justice. Ancient interpreters did, however. Unsatisfied with the story's ending, they looked for ways to ensure it finished with Cain's death. One early suggestion was that Cain died in the flood. This was a logical conclusion, since the list of those on Noah's Ark does not mention Cain. Interpreters assume that Cain must have lived until the time of the flood and died with other wicked people. So the flood narrative certainly provides a cleaner ending to his story, but there's another more creative solution that they came up with. This version ends with Cain being killed by his great-great-grandson Lamech. Now, how did this come about? The clue was found in something Lamech said to his wives. Remember, I read this last night. Lamech, after this whole scene with Cain, he came to his wives, Ada and Zillah, and he said, "Listen to me, wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." And this is in Genesis 4, 23 through 24. So although modern readers might gloss over Lamech's statement, ancient interpreters discovered a key to the riddle surrounding Cain's death. They noted that the Hebrew term ish, or man, in the Hebrew, appears only twice in Genesis 4. Once on the lips of Eve when Cain is born, she said, "For I have gained a man-child," a man, ish. And again in 4:23 when Lamech says that he killed a man, an ish. Now, noting this connection, interpreters identified the ish with Lamech killed as being the very same ish born to Eve. That man was Cain. But this ending was based on more than just repetition of a simple word. Lamech's appeal to the vengeance associated with Cain in Genesis 4:24 provided more support. God promises Cain that anyone who kills him will suffer 7 vengeances. But the meaning of this sentence is ambiguous in Hebrew. It's not clear if Cain or his killer is the recipient of the vengeance. The Septuagint, which I just mentioned, written in the late 500s BCE. The Septuagint, the translators of it, were aware of the ambiguity and perhaps unsatisfied with the way the historian had translated Genesis 4:15 into Greek, so that the sentence no longer reads, "Everyone who kills Cain will suffer 7-fold vengeance," but instead, "Everyone who kills Cain will lose 7 penalties." That's quite a difference. So the translation, language means things, folks. This is why it's so interesting to study this stuff. The translation of Lamech's words in Genesis 4:24 was altered to read, "Because vengeance has been extracted 7 times from Cain." So the result of these translations is that it's now clear that Cain was the recipient of the 7 vengeances, not his killer. So Lamech's killing of Cain was the comeuppance for Cain's act of fratricide. This is the theory. Does it sound like it gets a little convoluted? Teresa says, "What I mean to say is they killed creatures so they knew if they hit their brothers over the head, they could kill them as well." Yeah. So the Lamech legend was very popular in late antiquity through the Middle Ages, and it came to include details far beyond anything found in Genesis 4. And in these later versions, Lamech is a blind but skilled hunter who hunts with the help of his son Tubal-Cain, who directs his father's bow toward the game. Now, one day, however, the young boy mistakes a sound in the bushes for a wild animal. Lamech, with his son's assistance, shoots the animal and then sends him to see that what they've caught. When Tubal-Cain reaches the spot, he realizes that they've killed Cain. So Lamech becomes distressed to the point that he blindly claps his hands together and accidentally kills his son as well. So while this ending certainly adds more tragedy to the tale of Cain and Abel, it also achieves some really key results here. First, it ensures that Cain finally pays the ultimate price for his murder of Abel. Second, the description of Lamech as a blind man frees him from being accursed of the same crime as Cain. So Cain's death is an accident, which makes Lamech innocent of premeditated murder, which wasn't the case when Cain murdered Abel. At the same time, any apparent besmirching of God's justice toward Abel is removed, because these were all gaps in the story. So while most modern readers of the Bible are unfamiliar with the Lamech legend, it's in Genesis 4 if you want to go read it. It was well known in the past Its popularity is evidenced in the way it was displayed on a column on a column capital in the Cathedral of Saint Lazare in France, 1146. Variations of the legend also appear in the facade of the Modena Cathedral in Italy from 1180, and in several illuminated manuscripts, including the Egerton Genesis picture book. That was in 1360. There was a Genesis picture book in 1300s. The Holcomb Bible picture book in 1325, and the La Livre, I guess you would pronounce it, de Bons Moors by Jacques Legrand in 1490. So knowing the ending of the Cain and Abel story wasn't just an academic question for scholars. It was important to the common folk as well. Since much of the population couldn't read, the stories of the Bible were told through the visual arts. And the various depictions of Cain's death demonstrate that generations of people familiar with the story were interested in knowing that Cain's life did not have the happy ending that Genesis seems to allow. Well, he married a wife, had a kid, built a city. So, rather than accept an ending to the story that seemed unjust, they preferred a version with a more satisfactory conclusion. So it was important that God didn't let Cain get away with murder, even if it meant changing the details to protect the innocent while punishing the guilty. And you know what is so very, very interesting with all these stories is how they've changed to appeal to the masses. What does that tell you about the story? Does that degrade the original story? Does it enhance it? What's it do to our faith in the story if your faith is in the biblical events and the stories as they're written? Ryan Gale said, since no one had ever been murdered before, they wouldn't know it was wrong. I don't know about that, Ryan. I have to think about that for a second. So would that have been wrong? Would they have not known it was wrong? I would think they would understand that killing somebody, I'm going to take his life. Well, it's not cool. Anyway, maybe Adam said, not cool. Cain, not cool. So, ending someone's life. Yeah, I'd like to read the Book of Kells too, Teresa. It's beautiful. Go watch the movie, Teresa. Is it The Story of the Kells? It's an animated movie. The Secret of the Kells. I think it's The Secret of the Kells. You'll really enjoy that. So if you haven't seen it already, it's a beautifully animated movie. All right, folks. That's all we got for tonight. We're going to come back tomorrow night. You know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk a little bit more about Seth. Who was Seth, the ancestor of us all? Why does the biblical bloodlines all trace back to Seth, Adam's third born? We're going to talk about when the sons of God cavorted with the daughters of men. Also going to talk about Cain in Nod. So Friday night, we're going to wrap up this little series on Cain, this little series on the other people. Who were they? Where'd they come from? To me, this is ultimately very interesting stuff. Teresa, it's called The Secret of the Kells. Let's see. Let me find you a link here. Of the Kells. See if it comes up here. Yeah, this is it. The Secret of the Kells. It came out in 2009. You can get it on Prime or Amazon Prime. The Secret of the Kells. If you go here, this is the IMDb site. So you can go see about this. And I think there's even a trailer there. Yeah, a 2-minute trailer. There you go. Boom, that's the link. That's the IMDb site. You got to watch that. It's beautiful, a beautiful movie. And not just that, after The Secret of the Kells, they came out with The Song of the Sea, which I've also talked about. These same animators in Ireland, and it's about mermaids. Well, it's about the she, and that's why I brought it up. And you'll find that story very appealing as well. So anyway, that's all I got. There we go, folks. We're done for tonight. So I want to thank you for being here. If you are not a member of this channel, go down below, hit the join button. Little window will pop up and show you 3 ways you can become a member. $2 a month, $5 a month, $15 a month. And believe it or not, yes, there are perks. So get in there, enjoy them. We'll get those perks rolling here pretty soon. And I appreciate you being here. And thank you for your time. Spread the word if you like the show. Kevin Miller says, sounds like those people in the past had pretty wild imaginations. They certainly did, Kevin. You know what they were doing? They were trying to fill in the gaps that the Bible didn't fill in. As people were like, well, what happened to Cain? We want to see Cain get justice. So they had to fill in the blanks. So I would love to see that picture book too, Morgan. That'd be interesting to find. All right, everyone. You have a safe night. We'll see you again here in about 22 and a half hours. Take a break, and you know what? Live long and prosper. I love you all. Good night.